guys, so I'm here today to film my TBR video for the Queer Lit Readathon. So this instalment of the Queer Lit Readathon is running from the 1st to the 7th of December, and I've participated twice in the past. It is one of my favourite readathons. In fact, it may be my favourite after my own readathon. That's how much I love this readathon. I love the community that rises up around it, I love the book recommendations I find from it, and I always enjoy what I read during it. As the title suggests, this is a readathon all about reading LGBTQ+ literature. There is a bingo chart with lots of different categories and challenges that you can use as prompts to inspire what you read, and equally as encouragement to read as much as possible if that's what you want to do. I realised when I was making my TBR for this video that I have never completed a bingo chart or challenge set for a readathon ever in my life before. Like, it's not something I find myself prioritising when it comes to readathons, so I'm not going to set out my TBR as if I am fulfilling the challenges on this bingo chart. However, I will tell you what I would like to read in order of top priority down to what I might get to if I have time, and mention to you which prompts they would fill. So if you're looking for books for your own TBR, that might be helpful. I will of course link all of the information about the readathon in the description box down below, including the incredible hosts. Please do go check them all out. They are amazing, and I, like I said, love this readathon. I have in the past also vlogged my time reading during that week, so let me know if that's something you'd like me to do again this year. But without further ado, let's talk more about all of the wonderful LGBTQ+ literature on my TBR. First up is absolute top priority, and it is in fact the group read. So every round of the readathon there is a group read so that people can, if they want, kind of buddy read it together as a community, and this year it is Orpheus Girl. Now, I was so pleased to see this was the buddy read because it's a book I already have on my Kindle. I got a e-arc from NetGalley to review and had been meaning to start it for ages because it is a modern day retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, which is a Greek myth of quite a tragic love story, but told following two young women, teenage girls I think, in a queer relationship who are sent to a conversion camp, which is such a disturbingly still relevant issue, and equally I think a really interesting narrative to retell this myth through, or a really interesting use of this myth to tell this story. So I'm so excited to see what the author does with this story, and I'm so pleased to know that lots of people will be reading this book because it is the buddy read. Now, for the categories this book would fulfill, there is of course group read, it would also come under own voices, and for me, new author as well as potentially new genre. It is a Greek myth retelling, which is something I read a lot of, but I don't read a lot of contemporary YA. So it's definitely not a genre I read tons of, and it is a contemporary YA story, although inspired by this myth. It may fill other categories, I'm not sure. Let me know if you know any categories I don't mention that these books fit into. Next up for top priority is Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Ngan. So this is the sequel to Girls of Paper and Fire, which I actually read during my first ever Queer Lit Readathon. Was it the group read? I think maybe it was the group read. And it is a fantasy YA story that deals heavily with sexual assault and sexual abuse, so be aware of that going into it, but it's also an incredible heartwarming love story between two women who are forced to serve as concubines to a pretty evil king in this fantasy realm, and I adored it. I thought it was such a wonderful story, and I have been eagerly anticipating the release of book 2, which came out in November, and I just got sent a review copy by the publisher, so I was like, it's so serendipitous that I will get to read the sequel to this book during the Queer Lit Readathon, since I read the first book also during the Queer Lit Readathon. In terms of categories, this book would tick off the Read a Book by a POC author box. I then have some graphic novels. I just borrowed these from the library, which is why I want to get them during the Queer Lit Readathon before I have to return them, and they should also be quicker reads than, say, a novel, and mean I can read a little bit more Queer Lit during that week. And the first one is Dead India, The Watcher's Test by Hamish Steele, and this has a trans main character, and it's all about a group of friends that work in a haunted theme park that turns out to contain a gateway to hell. It's also a comedy, so I kind of love the idea of those kind of dark worlds being part of a comedy plot line, and the artwork looks like it will fit perfectly with that tone. And apart from one of the main characters being a trans man, I believe there is also other LGBTQ plus rep within this graphic novel. So like I mentioned, this would fulfill the trans main character category, it would also fulfill the graphic novel category, and I also think it could safely cover the rainbow cover category because there are tons of colours going on in this one. We then have The Woods, which is the first volume in the Arrow comic book series, and this is a kind of science fiction horror queer graphic novel, and it's about a entire like school, including staff and pupils, who disappear one day and find themselves in a kind of horror, paranormal, sciencey, futuristic world that is unrecognisable and they have to survive. I love horror graphic novels. Sometimes my library puts these LGBT stickers on the graphic novels and I really enjoy that because it means I've picked up some stuff that I might not have otherwise. Don't know much else about it, just thought it sounded interesting and up my street. It would of course fulfill the graphic novel challenge. It may fulfill other challenges, but like I said, I don't actually know where the queer aspect comes into this or what part of the LGBTQ plus spectrum characters come under, so we will see. I do also always like to have an audiobook on the go, so I had a little look on Scribd at what I had saved that came under the queer category, and one of those was Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is book one in the Locked Tomb series, and I don't know a terrible amount about this except I've seen a lot of people mention it on their channels, so I decided to save it on Scribd, and now I'm thinking I will listen to it for this readathon. And it is about necromancers in a fantasy world, and I believe there's a female-female romance. So our character Gideon, who is a swordswoman, gets hired by this necromancer who needs a swordswoman, and I'm assuming that relationship develops into some sort of romance. So I am excited to just kind of find out what this one's about. Like I said, I like to have an audiobook on the go, and that one is there waiting for me, so I'm gonna give it a chance. I realise that I've not actually been great at mentioning categories. Gideon in the Ninth would also fulfill new author to me, but not necessarily to you, obviously, as would both of these graphic novels. Now I do think that's already quite a lot, so it depends how much reading I get done that week, but I do have a few more books that I may give a shot if I have time. And one of those is Belle Revolt by Lindsay Miller. I just got sent a proof copy of this, and it is queer fantasy, which you know I love. I think there is a female-female romance in here somewhere. I think there's like bi or pan rep, as well as ace or aro rep. So I will be interested to see how that representation comes across, if it applies to one character in particular or whether there's lots of different LGBTQ plus characters in this book. I don't know. I only know what the blurb tells me, which is Emily Desmarais is more at home holding scalpels and embroidery needles and is desperate to escape her noble roots to serve her country as a physician. But society dictates that a noble lady cannot perform such gruesome work. Annette Bouchard, overlooked and overworked by her family, wants more from life than her humble beginnings and longs to be trained in magic. So when a strange, noble girl offers Annette the chance of a lifetime, she accepts. Emily and Annette swap lives. Annette attends finishing school as a noble lady to be trained in the way of divination, while Emily enrolls to a physician's assistant, using her natural magical talent to save lives. But when their nation instigates a terrible war, Emily and Annette must work together to help the rebellion unearth the truth before it's too late. This is also a standalone, which is rare in fantasy, so I'm always up for more standalone fantasy. And one more book that I may or may not get to is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. And I am so fascinated by this book. I recently got approved for a review copy on NetGalley, and even if I don't read it during the Queer Lit Readathon, I'm going to make a priority to read it soon, because it is a female-female romance. But the main characters are not humans, nor are they elves or fairies. They are orcs, which I think is so cool. I read another book this year where orcs were not like the evil bad guy characters and really enjoyed it. As a fantasy reader, I really enjoy when fantasy authors kind of turn the tables on creatures and characters that we usually think of as fulfilling the bad guy role. And this is about two gay orcs who fall in love with one another, and like, I just think that's brilliant. That might not sound like your cup of tea, but I am here for it. I don't really know anything else about it, but that's enough, to be honest. So those are the books that I would like to get to during the Queer Lit Readathon. I may or may not get to them all, but I would love to know if you've read any of them, if you could recommend any of them to me. Do you think there are ones that I should absolutely prioritise above all else. I still think that my first two are my top priorities, but do let me know. Equally, let me know if there's more audiobooks on Scribd that you know of that have queer protagonists in them, because although I do have one on my TBR, I might have time for more than one audiobook, so let me know. But aside from that, I'd love to know what you plan on reading during the Queer Lit Readathon, even if it's only one book. So until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys!